The courtroom was filled with a tense silence, the kind that made every cough and shuffle sound louder than it should. The air smelled like polished wood and old books, and the fluorescent lights cast an almost clinical glow on everything. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands resting on the cool surface, my fingers tightening around the pen I had been holding since we arrived. Across the aisle, my parents sat stiffly in their seats, their expressions ranging from frustration to disbelief. My mother, Lisa Carter, had her arms folded, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her elbow. My father, Mark Carter, kept shifting in his chair, his face set in an expression that was either defiance or barely contained rage. They looked like parents who had been dragged into a courtroom by some stranger. Not the ones who had raised me, not the ones who had tucked me into bed at night when I was little. But the truth was, I didn't recognize them anymore. Not after what they had done. Judge Reynolds, a stern-looking man with graying hair and sharp eyes, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses as he flipped through the pages of my case file. His expression was unreadable, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Miss Carter," he said finally, his voice firm but calm. "You're suing your parents for the misuse of your college trust fund?" I swallowed hard but kept my voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor." My mother let out an exaggerated sigh and shook her head as if the whole situation was just too ridiculous for her to comprehend. "This is outrageous," she muttered loud enough for the courtroom to hear. "She's our daughter. We raised her, provided for her, and now she's dragging us to court over money." My father nodded in agreement, his face twisting with irritation. "We did what we thought was best," he added. "She's acting like we're criminals." I turned my head to look at them directly. "Because what you did was a crime," I said, my voice sharper than I had intended. The courtroom murmured with quiet whispers. A few people exchanged glances, probably wondering what kind of case this was turning out to be. My lawyer, Mr. Jennings, a tall, no-nonsense man with graying hair and an impeccable suit, turned to me. "Tell the court exactly what happened, Olivia." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "My parents always promised me that they had a college fund for me," I began, my voice clear and unwavering. "Ever since I was a kid, they reassured me that I had nothing to worry about. Every time the topic of tuition came up, they said, 'We've been saving for years.' I trusted them. I believed them. But then on my 18th birthday, I found out the truth." I turned and looked straight at my parents, watching their faces shift from frustration to discomfort. They spent every single dollar on vacations, designer clothes, and a brand new car. My mother scoffed, shaking her head. "You're twisting things, Olivia," she said, her tone dismissive. "We had to use some of that money for important things. Life isn't cheap, you know." I let out a bitter laugh. "Important things?" I echoed. "You went to Paris twice. You bought yourself a Chanel bag. Dad, you got a boat. Where's the part where you thought about my future?" My father's jaw clenched and he turned away slightly as if refusing to engage. Judge Reynolds banged his gavel. "Enough. Let's proceed with the facts." Mr. Jennings stood and walked toward the judge, holding out a thick folder. "Your Honor, we have bank statements, receipts, and financial records proving that the money, over $120,000, was originally set aside for Olivia's college education. However, by the time she turned 18, her parents had drained the account, leaving her with nothing." I turned back toward the judge. "I had no idea the money was gone until I asked for access to it to pay for my tuition. That's when they finally admitted it." The judge took the folder and examined the contents carefully. He sighed, adjusting his glasses as he turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, do you deny that the trust fund was originally intended for your daughter's education?" My mother shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it was for her," she said, her voice suddenly uncertain. "But we had needs too," my father added quickly. "We thought we'd replace the money eventually." I felt my anger bubbling up again. "You thought you'd replace it? What? You didn't even have jobs that could replenish that amount of money. You spent it knowing there was no way you'd be able to pay it back." "We didn't think it was that big of a deal," my mother said, rolling her eyes. "Student loans exist for a reason, Olivia." I shook my head, my hands balling into fists. "That's not the point. The point is that you lied to me for years. You let me believe I was secure when I wasn't. I trusted you." The judge sighed deeply, looking back at the documents. "Mr. Jennings, do you have evidence showing exactly how the money was spent?" Mr. Jennings nodded and handed over another set of documents. Yes, Your Honor. These are detailed statements from their bank accounts. You'll notice large withdrawals coinciding with luxury travel bookings, high-end shopping purchases, and other non-essential expenses. The judge studied the papers, his expression hardening. He then looked up at my parents, who were now visibly panicking. Mrs. Carter, he said, his voice firm. Do you have any justification for these expenses? She swallowed hard. It wasn't just vacations. We also used the money for home repairs. I let out a dry laugh. That's a lie. The house looks exactly the same as it did 10 years ago. My father shot me a glare. Watch your tone, young lady, he snapped. Judge Reynolds cut him off with a sharp look. That's enough, Mr. Carter. He turned back to me. Miss Carter, what exactly are you seeking in damages? I straightened my back. I want them to pay back every penny they took from me, I said firmly. With interest. The courtroom murmured again, and I could see my parents' faces turning pale. They hadn't expected me to take it this far. They had thought I would be too afraid, too loyal to them to fight back. But they were wrong. The judge took another long look at the documents before setting them down with a sigh. This is a clear case of trust fund mismanagement. The court will review the final amount, but based on the evidence presented, it is likely that the defendants will be required to repay the full sum. My mother let out a sharp gasp and my father's face turned red with anger. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to them, my voice steady. You stole my future for your luxuries, I said. So I made sure you had to pay for it anyway. And I would make sure they did. The courtroom battle was only the beginning. Winning the case wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about exposing the betrayal that had unraveled everything I once believed about my parents. But before I had my day in court, I had to uncover the full extent of their deception. The day my life changed forever started like any other. I had just turned 18, and with college acceptance letters arriving, I was filled with excitement and relief. I had worked tirelessly to get into my dream school, Stanford, and now all that was left was handling the tuition payments. Growing up, my parents had always assured me that my education was taken care of. We started saving the moment you were born, my dad had said more times than I could count. You'll never have to worry about student loans, Mom would add. I believed them, never questioning the financial security they had promised me. But that illusion shattered the moment I sat down with them to discuss accessing my college fund. We were sitting at the dining table, the one we had used for holiday dinners, birthday celebrations, and family discussions. The sun was shining through the large window, casting golden light over the wooden surface, but the moment felt anything but warm. So, I said, my voice eager, how do we go about transferring the money to Stanford? Do I need to fill out any forms? My parents exchanged a quick glance. It was subtle, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten with unease. Well, my dad started, rubbing the back of his neck. There's something we need to talk about. Mom let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head as if she were the one with a problem. Olivia, sweetheart, the thing is, the money is gone. I blinked, not sure I had heard her correctly. What? Dad leaned forward, clasping his hands together like he was about to explain something reasonable. We had to use it for other things. I stared at them, trying to process their words. Other things. I repeated slowly. What other things could possibly be more important than my college tuition? Mom pursed her lips, looking slightly annoyed. Life expenses, Olivia. Things come up. We needed the money. What life expenses? My voice was rising now, panic creeping in. We live in the same house we always have. You both drive the same cars. What did you spend over $100,000 on? Neither of them spoke at first. It was Dad who finally sighed and admitted, we took a few vacations. My heart pounded in my ears. A few vacations? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. Mom shrugged. Paris, Greece, a couple of cruises. We deserved them, Olivia. We worked hard our whole lives. I stared at her in shock, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. You deserved them? My voice was shaking now, rage and betrayal mixing together like poison. You lied to me for 18 years. You made me believe my future was secure, and you spent my entire trust fund on vacations. It wasn't just vacations, Dad said defensively. We also made some important purchases. Things that benefited the family. I narrowed my eyes. Like what? Mom crossed her arms. Well, I got a few designer handbags. And your father? She bought purses with my college fund? I was practically shouting now. And what about you, Dad? What did you buy? Dad cleared his throat. I bought a boat. A boat. The words felt unreal in my mouth. Like I was trapped in some twisted nightmare. Mom rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic, Olivia. Plenty of people take out student loans. It's not the end of the world. My whole body went cold. I had spent years pushing myself to excel in school because I believed I wouldn't have to carry the burden of debt. They had let me believe that, when all along they had been spending my future away. And the worst part? They didn't even seem sorry. I stormed out of the house that day, my mind spinning. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. I went to my best friend Rachel's house, tears blurring my vision as I told her everything. They stole from me, I said, pacing back and forth in her bedroom. They literally stole my future and acted like it was nothing. Rachel shook her head, anger flashing in her eyes. That's messed up, Olivia. Really messed up. There has to be something you can do. But at that moment I felt helpless. I had worked my entire life believing my education was secured, only to be thrown into a pit of debt I had never prepared for. I applied for student loans that week, my hands shaking as I signed the papers. Every dollar I borrowed felt like a weight being chained to my ankles, dragging me deeper into the mess my parents had created. But the longer I sat with my anger, the more I realized I wasn't powerless. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I would just accept it, take out loans and move on. But they underestimated me. If they had used my money for their selfish luxuries, then I was going to make damn sure they paid for it. One way or another. I started digging. I went through old documents, bank statements, anything I could get my hands on. And that's when I found something interesting. The account my parents had drained. It wasn't just a regular savings account. It was a trust fund, legally protected, meant only for my education. And by spending it on anything but my schooling, my parents had broken the law. I met with a lawyer, Mr. Jennings, who listened carefully as I explained everything. This is a clear case of trust mismanagement, he said, flipping through the financial records I had gathered. Your parents were the trustees of this fund, and they were legally obligated to use it for your education. Instead, they used it for personal expenses. That's embezzlement. I clenched my fist. So I can sue them? Mr. Jennings nodded. Not only can you sue them, but you have a strong case. The court will likely order them to repay every cent they took. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. They thought they had stolen my future without consequences. They were wrong. The night before I filed the lawsuit, I sat my parents down one last time. I know what you did, I said coldly. Mom scoffed. Olivia, we've been over this. No, I cut her off. I really know. I know the account was a trust fund. I know it was legally meant for my education. And I know that by spending it on yourselves, you broke the law. Their faces paled. I'm giving you one chance, I continued. Pay back every cent. Right now. Or I take you to court. Dad stood up, rage flashing in his eyes. You wouldn't dare. I met his gaze, my voice steady. Watch me. They had stolen my future. Now I was going to make sure they paid for it. The moment I officially filed the lawsuit against my parents, there was no turning back. The bond that once held our family together had already been fractured by their betrayal, but now, it was completely shattered. They had expected me to take my student loans quietly and move on. They had expected me to be too scared or too powerless to fight back. But they had underestimated just how far I was willing to go to make sure they paid for what they had done. Filing the lawsuit wasn't just a legal step. It was a declaration of war. The moment my parents were served the papers, all hell broke loose. It started with the phone calls. You are suing us? My mother shrieked over the phone the evening they received the notice. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Yes, I replied calmly. I'm making sure you're held accountable for stealing from me. You ungrateful little brat, she snapped. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I interrupted, my voice dripping with disbelief. You lied to me for 18 years about saving for my future. You took money that wasn't yours and blew it on vacations and luxury items while I now have to take out thousands of dollars in loans. And you think I'm the ungrateful one? Dad grabbed the phone from her. You're making a mistake, Olivia, he said, his voice tense with barely contained anger. You don't want to do this. Oh, I do, I shot back. And I will. I hung up, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. The anger in their voices only fueled my resolve. They weren't sorry. They weren't even trying to make it right. And that meant I had no reason to back down. Word spread quickly among our extended family. My parents wasted no time in trying to turn people against me, painting themselves as the victims of a heartless daughter who was dragging them to court over a little financial mismanagement. Grandma called first. "Sweetheart, this is family business. You don't take family to court." "Grandma," I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose, "if someone else had stolen $100,000 from me, would you tell me to just let it go?" "Well, that's different." "No, it's not," I cut her off. "They stole from me, Grandma. They spent my education fund on themselves and left me in debt. And they don't even feel bad about it." She sighed heavily but didn't argue further. Other relatives, however, weren't as understanding. Aunt Linda called to tell me I was disgracing the family. Uncle Rob said I was tearing my parents apart. Even my cousin Emily, who hated my mom, told me I was taking things too far. But none of them had to live with the consequences of what my parents had done. None of them had to carry the debt they had dumped on me. So I ignored their guilt trips and prepared for the fight ahead. The first hearing was surreal. Walking into the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of nerves and determination. My parents sat across from me at the plaintiff's table, their faces tight with anger and frustration. Mom looked especially furious, dressed in an expensive outfit, one of the many luxury purchases she had made with my money. My lawyer, Mr. Jennings, presented our case with precision. "This is not a case of a child suing their parents out of spite," he told the judge. "This is a clear case of trust mismanagement. My client's parents were legally responsible for safeguarding her education fund. Instead, they misused those funds for personal luxuries, violating their fiduciary duty as trustees. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that they had every right to use the money as they saw fit. It was a family fund, he claimed. They were entitled to use it for the benefit of the family. But it wasn't for general family expenses, Mr. Jennings countered. It was a legally established trust, meant exclusively for Olivia's education. By using it for vacations and luxury items, they broke the law. The judge listened carefully. Then came the moment that changed everything. Mr. Jennings handed over a document, a forensic audit of my parents' financial records. It showed exactly where the money had gone. $25,000 on international vacations. $15,000 on designer handbags and jewelry. $10,000 on a boat. $8,000 on spa treatments and personal expenses. $5,000 on home upgrades and entertainment systems. And $0 toward my education. The judge's expression darkened as he read through the statements. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice sharp. "Can you explain these expenses?" Mom looked like she was about to cry, but Dad still had the nerve to try and justify it. "We thought we'd be able to replace the money before Olivia went to college," he claimed. "Things just didn't work out that way." "Mr. Williams," the judge said sternly, "this was a legally protected trust. Your intentions do not change the fact that you misused these funds. You had a legal obligation to safeguard this money for your daughter's education, and you failed to do so." There was a heavy silence in the courtroom. For the first time, I saw a flicker of real fear in my parents' eyes. They knew they were losing. The judge didn't waste time. "I find in favor of the plaintiff," he ruled. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams are hereby ordered to repay the full amount of the trust, $100,000, plus legal fees. Failure to comply will result in further legal action." My mother gasped. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red. "This is insane." Mom screeched. "She's our daughter. We shouldn't have to pay." "That's exactly why you should have protected her future," the judge snapped. "You have 60 days to return the full amount." My parents had officially lost. And I had officially won. Winning the case wasn't just about the money. It was about justice. It was about proving that they couldn't betray me and walk away unscathed. The aftermath was brutal. My parents were humiliated. They were forced to sell their boat, their luxury items, and even refinance the house just to repay what they owed me. The family tried to make me the villain, but I didn't care. I had fought for myself. And I had won. The money went straight into my tuition. I started college debt-free, knowing that I had taken control of my own future. My relationship with my parents? Destroyed. But that was a price I was willing to pay. Because in the end, they had already broken our bond the moment they chose their luxuries over my future. Winning the lawsuit should have felt like the ultimate victory, but the reality was more complicated. Yes, my parents were legally forced to repay every cent they had stolen from me, but the cost of this battle extended far beyond money. The fallout was brutal. My family was in shambles, my reputation among my relatives was torn apart, and the very people who should have supported my future now acted like I was their greatest enemy. But even after the judge's ruling, my parents weren't done fighting me. The tension exploded the day after the verdict. I had barely stepped into my apartment when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Mom. A part of me hesitated. Did I really want to hear whatever she had to say? But curiosity got the better of me. The moment I answered, her furious voice blasted through the speaker. Are you happy now, Olivia? You've ruined us. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I didn't ruin anything, Mom. You and Dad did that when you stole from me. Stole, she shrieked. We're your parents. We raised you. We were entitled to that money. I gritted my teeth. No, you weren't. That money was put aside for my education. It was never meant to fund your vacations and shopping sprees. Dad's voice cut in, calmer but ice cold. You've humiliated us, Olivia. Do you have any idea how many people know about this now? We can't even show our faces at church without people whispering behind our backs. Maybe you should have thought about that before you embezzled my education fund, I snapped. Actions have consequences. Mom scoffed. Consequences? You don't understand real consequences. We had to refinance the house because of you. Your father and I are drowning in debt because of this ridiculous lawsuit. Then maybe you should have saved for your future instead of stealing from mine, I said, my voice cold. There was a long, tense silence. Then Mom's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You're dead to us, Olivia. And she hung up. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. Dead to them. Maybe I should have felt devastated, but instead I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time I was truly free. The lawsuit hadn't just cost me my relationship with my parents. It had turned nearly my entire extended family against me. Aunt Linda sent me a scathing email. You should be ashamed of yourself. Your parents did their best for you and you repaid them by dragging them through the mud. No matter how much money you won, you'll never be able to buy back your family. Uncle Rob left me a furious voicemail, ranting about family loyalty and how I had destroyed the Williams name. Even my cousin Emily, who had always been more like a sister, texted me. I get why you were upset, but did you really have to take it to court? Couldn't you have just worked it out another way? As if there had ever been another way. The worst part. My parents had taken full control of the narrative. They told everyone that I had turned against them out of greed, painting themselves as the victims of an ungrateful daughter. No one wanted to hear my side of the story, so I stopped trying to explain myself. I focused on school, on rebuilding my life, on moving forward. But just when I thought I had left it all behind, my parents found a new way to make me suffer. A few months after the lawsuit, I received a notice in the mail. I skimmed through the legal jargon, my pulse quickening, and then I saw it. My parents were suing me for emotional distress. I laughed bitterly. Of course they were. I immediately called Mr. Jennings, my lawyer, and read the notice out loud. They're claiming I caused them financial and emotional harm by taking them to court, I said. Can they even do that? He sighed. It's a ridiculous claim, but unfortunately, anyone can file a lawsuit. The good news is they have no legal ground to stand on. The bad news? You're going to have to go through another court battle. I groaned, rubbing my temples. Unbelievable. They're doing this to intimidate you, he said. They know they can't win, but they want to drag you through another fight out of spite. I swallowed my frustration. Then let's fight. This time, my parents walked into the courtroom looking less like a wealthy couple and more like people who had been backed into a corner. Mom's designer outfits had been replaced with something more modest. Dad looked exhausted, his jaw clenched tight. They had lost their lavish lifestyle. And they blamed me. Their lawyer stood up first. Your Honor, my clients have suffered severe emotional distress due to their daughter's legal actions. They have faced public humiliation, financial ruin, and irreparable damage to their reputations. We seek damages to compensate for their suffering. I almost laughed. They were trying to make me pay them after everything they had done? Mr. Jennings didn't even look fazed. Your Honor, this case is baseless. The Williamses were found guilty of misusing a legally protected trust. Their suffering is a direct result of their own financial misconduct, not my client's actions. The judge nodded. Agreed. The court dismisses the lawsuit due to lack of merit. Just like that, my parents lost again. The glares they shot me on the way out of the courtroom could have melted steel. But I didn't care. Because I had won. Walking out of the courthouse, I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was empty. I had fought for justice and I had gotten it. But in the process I had lost my parents, my family, my sense of belonging. Was it worth it? I thought about the years of lies. The betrayal. The way they had left me to struggle while they indulged themselves. Yes, it was worth it. Because I wasn't just fighting for my education. I was fighting for my future. My independence. My self-respect. And that was something no amount of money could buy. By the time I graduated college, I had built a life without them. I had a job lined up. Friends who had become my real family. A future that was finally mine. And my parents? They had made their choice. They chose greed over love. Lies over loyalty. And now they had to live with the consequences. Just like I had. But unlike them, I was moving forward. And I wasn't looking back. Graduating college was supposed to be the fresh start I had been fighting for. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, and told myself that I had won. That I was free. That my parents no longer had any power over me. But deep down I knew it wasn't over. Because some wounds don't heal just because you decide to move on. And my parents weren't done making my life difficult. A week after graduation, I received an email from my father. Subject: we need to talk. I stared at the screen, debating whether to open it. Against my better judgment, I clicked. Olivia. You've had your fun ruining our lives, but it's time to stop acting like a spoiled child. Your mother and I are willing to talk, on the condition that you apologize and agree to drop all this hostility. We are still your parents and you owe us at least that much respect. If you want to move forward, you'll make things right. Otherwise, you can forget about ever being a part of this family again. I let out a humorless laugh. After everything they had done, they still believed I was the one who needed to apologize. I didn't even bother responding. But a few days later, I found out exactly what they meant by making things right. A lawyer's letter arrived at my door. My parents had rewritten their wills, and I had officially been cut out of the family inheritance. Not that I wanted their money. But this was their way of making a statement. One last power play to remind me that they still had the upper hand. Or at least that's what they thought. I took the letter, folded it neatly, and tossed it into the trash. They could keep their money. I had already won. I thought that was the end of it, but then something unexpected happened. A few weeks later, I got a call from my grandmother, my dad's mother. Olivia, dear, she said, her voice warm but laced with sadness. I heard what your parents did. Cutting you off, trying to punish you for standing up for yourself. It's disgraceful. I blinked in surprise. Grandma had always been a quiet presence in the family, never interfering, never picking sides. I just wanted you to know, she continued, that I don't agree with them. And I won't let them get away with it. Before I could ask what she meant, she dropped the bombshell. I've rewritten my will, Olivia. Your parents may think they can control everything, but they won't control this. When I pass, my estate will go to you, not them. My breath caught in my throat. Grandma, You earned it, she interrupted gently. And they need to learn that actions have consequences. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had family again. Not all blood ties had been broken. Years passed. I built my career, made a name for myself, and created the life I had always dreamed of, without my parents. And when my grandmother passed, I honored her legacy, using the inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for students who had been betrayed by their families, just like me. As for my parents, when they found out Grandma had left them nothing, they tried to contest the will. They lost. And this time they finally understood. I was never going to bow to them. I was never going to let them control me. They had lied. They had stolen. They had betrayed me. And in the end they had lost everything. Well, I had gained something far more valuable than money. I had gained my freedom.